Welcome back to the Wolff Den presented by Win Again Academy. I'm Matt Wolff, founder and CEO of Ticket Time Machine. Today we welcome Billy Martin Jr. to the program. Welcome to the Den.
Well, I'm glad to be here.
Not bad, not bad. For the people in the audience who don't know who you are, give a real quick intro and then let's get to it.
I'm a baseball agent. I started a booking agency about a year ago, and we book musical talent all over the country. My father was kind of a famous guy, Billy Martin. Hopefully we'll be in the Hall of Fame one day as a manager. He was also a great Yankee player, won 5 World Series rings as a player, including MVP of the 53 World Series. But father of 3, and life's good.
Life is good. Well, let's talk about baseball. You're heavily involved in baseball. It's no surprise why. Talk a little bit about the early days of you and just at the ballpark with Dad. What kind of experience was it? Obviously, you don't know otherwise, but how do you think it compares to someone who just had a love for baseball and, threw the baseball around with their dad in the backyard?
It was just part of life for me as a kid. I mean, when I was real young, 5, 6, going to 81 baseball games a year, every single home game, to just sit there and try to break down and watch the games wasn't easy when you're a little kid, right? I had a lot more fun sneaking under the bleachers with Robbie Alomar or, playing card games with Barry Bonds. But as I got older, I realized how lucky I was. I remember the moment I was, I don't know, 12, 13, 14 maybe, in a Yankee uniform in Fenway Park. I had Thurman Munson's catcher's mitt on, shagging balls in left field, and a ball hit off the green monster and made that iconic thunk that only the monster sounds like. And the history overwhelmed me in that moment. I was, wow. Babe Ruth used to run around this outfield, and Ted Williams and the DiMaggio brothers, and the history of it all kind of hit me. And, I think my knees were wobbling a little on the next fly ball that got hit my way. But that was the moment that really brought it to my attention how lucky I was to be his son and to be down there hanging out with the guys and seeing all the history I got to see.
Was that was it normal manager's son behavior? I mean, is that what most kids of the manager were able to do, or were you able to experience maybe above and beyond?
I don't know how many, I don't know if some of them wanted to. Like I said, when we were so little, there's so much baseball forced on you to a point, you just rather go play. You'd just rather go hang out with, especially, my mother made me, sit still in the family section or the owner's box. And so, I don't know, you look at it differently for quite a while, but, Dad, I would just travel with the team for weeks at a time, sometimes in the summer. And I absolutely loved it. I mean, I did get to see so much, some things that I'm not at liberty to talk about, some things I am. And man, I'd say it was a little more than the normal kid got to go through. But, my father always wanted kids around the clubhouse. And only Ken Griffey Jr. thinks differently than that.
My friend Dave Gabriel, I think I told you about him. He's the biggest Yankee fan I know. He's the biggest Yankee fan I know. Watches them all the time. So I'm sure he's excited to hear some stuff from you. At what point did you realize the significance of the Yankees? Because when you're younger, obviously, you can tell, obviously, we're winning. But at what point did it really hit you that the Yankees are the team?
I don't know if it was Dad going back there the second time or the third time or the fourth time, maybe the fifth time when it really sunk in. My father was never truly happy unless he was in pinstripes. Personally, I loved it when he was in Oakland because he was the Pope there. It was his team. He was manager and GM when he first got that job. The marketing campaign was Billy Ball, catch it. The billboards just said Billy Ball. And I don't think that's ever happened since, where the marketing campaign revolved around the manager.
Now they had Billy Ball. I think they did a movie about Billy Ball in Oakland, right? But
sure,
yeah. you were involved in baseball from the beginning. You said so much baseball. A lot of times that would turn people off from baseball, but obviously it didn't with you because you've been a Major League Baseball agent for 25 plus years. Why did you want to continue in baseball?
I grew up in it, I guess. There were relationships. The lifestyle is unique. Part of it you love. Spring training every spring. Traveling all over the place. Sometimes it's a pain. Sometimes it's awesome. But I think the relationships are the main reason I'm still here, because, I've known so many of these people since I was just a little guy that it makes everything go a lot smoother.
At what point when you were younger did you start to have the eye for baseball to be an agent? Do you remember when that was, and when you thought, I'd like to be an agent, or was it, hey, I want to be in baseball, what can I be? What was the process like?
Well, actually, it was my father's suggestion. He was pushing that on me. I don't know if it was my below average arm or my below average power on my scouting chart, but no, it was really, I think, because he saw where the salaries were headed, and you can do this job until you're 70. Whereas the baseball player has a shelf life. Yeah. And unless they go into coaching, they're done.
Anniversary of Thurman Munson's passing today. What did it mean to be around people like Thurman, and how, yours is obviously quite a bit of age difference, and you're a kid. People are friendly to the kids when they see him around, but what type of relationship were you able to get with some of the players back in the day?
Well, Thurman was really good to me. He and my father had a great relationship. I was actually with Dad when we found out about his accident. It was terrible. He had a practice. Dad called a practice on the off day because the team was not playing great. Thurman had bought a small plane so that he could fly home and be with his wife and kids whenever they had off days. He wasn't your typical superstar. he didn't run around on his wife. He tried to find ways to get home and be with her and the kids. And so we had a practice that morning. I was actually taking ground balls at second base, and Thurman was in the dugout with my father watching me take ground balls. And he said to my father, I hope someday I can see in my sons myself the way I see you and Billy Joe, talking about me. He saw him in my mannerisms, the way I look. That crushed my father. The next day we're fishing and we were not catching anything. And he was giving his friend a hard time when we heard a police officer with a bullhorn. Billy Martin, come to the shore. Billy Martin, to the dock, please. I remember Dad looking at me and saying, what'd I do now, Pard? What'd I do? Laughingly, we get to the dock and there were 2 police cars. They said, Mr. Martin, we have an emergency phone call for you. So he got in that police car and they took him to a phone booth. As I climbed in the other one, the officer told me what was going on. He said, look, your father's about to get an emergency phone call from Diane Munson. They didn't want him to hear on the radio that Thurman just died in a plane crash. And yeah, it was all it crushed him. We went home, watched 2 John Wayne movies. He cried like 20 times. At one moment, he said he wanted to go out. And I'm like, Dad, you can't go out tonight. Somebody will say something to you. You're going to snap.
Yeah.
You can't do that to Thurman's memory. He's like, you're right. I can't. I made him a scotch and soda, and he never touched it.
It's much different. Like we think about what happened with Kobe in the news. I mean, it's such a different environment now. And that's the same in sports with everything. Breaking news getting broken to people, via the social media and news. Everyone's trying to get a story. It probably was like that, but they didn't have the access, right? I mean, the difference in the game, in the media, and being around it and being an agent from 50 years ago is different than, it's different 2 years ago than it was 8 years ago, and especially with COVID and technology and all of this stuff. So what's the biggest difference that you've seen in baseball as someone who's been around baseball, as someone who's an agent in baseball, and as someone who's a fan? What's the biggest difference? What have you seen that you like? What have you seen that you don't like?
Well, one of the things I miss is every time a hitter steps into the box, he used to have a job to do. And it was a different job each at bat, right? Sometimes it was just to get on base. Sometimes it's to move somebody over. Sometimes it's knocking a run. Now it just feels like guys are swinging for the fence every at bat, regardless of the situation. And that beats me down a little bit. But I do like the pitch clock. I do. I like the way it speeds up the game, and we don't have to watch guys adjust their, batting gloves as many times as we have in the past. So I think that's a good thing. I like it better when it was run by the players. When a player pipped a home run, did something out of line, he got knocked down the next time he came up to bat.
Yeah, Mike Wilbon is big on that. I watch a lot of PTI, and he'd like to hear that. I don't know. I mean, it's like I think there's room for it. I think it's different than fighting in hockey that I think they needed to get rid of. But I think there's room for it. And maybe people are kind of doing it now, but not really. It's like they find different ways. It's interesting, because I don't look at the attendance numbers or anything like that, but baseball is just as popular as ever. And I think they added stuff, gambling and fantasy, all of that stuff. If we start taking away that stuff, I think the game is maybe less exciting for people and less well attended and watched and followed.
Well, it's such an old game, and you can pick apart things. Some scouts and I were doing that the other day, bringing up some of the crazy things that bother us. Old rules, the three guys converging on a fly ball that they all lose in the sun and it hits right in between them. That goes down as a hit, and it should not, because that poor pitcher gave up a pop-up, and now he's given up a hit and maybe runs that become earned on a ball that should have been caught by three guys. The sun was there yesterday at the exact same time and has been for thousands of years. So I don't know. That one bugs me.
From a sports perspective, though, the fundamentals of baseball are the most practiced and executed, as opposed to if we start looking at basketball, and the evolution of basketball. I guess it's hard to say on football, but still, people relying on their athleticism,
Mm-hmm.
right? You can rely on your athleticism a little bit in baseball, but at the end of the day, you got to have the fundamentals. You got to have the skills, right?
Oh, and you better have this.
Yeah.
I mean, people want to talk about analytics a lot now, but I want to know what's between a guy's ears, because if I could read that, my job would be a lot easier. I promise you.
Let's talk about the baseball, being an agent. You just had the draft. Give me a timeline of what you have to go throughout the year, from pre-draft to draft, and then what happens afterwards, and just so people get a little bit of an insight into the day in the life of agent.
Sure. So we all have some clients for next year and the following years, right? Our guys who were just drafted have all signed. Thank goodness. They're all in camp. They're all playing games. They're not all playing games. Some of the pitchers are just going to throw some bullpens and shut it down. They're going to work with some of the guys with their new club, and they're going to give them lots of off-season ideas to work on. They're going to give them a workout that they want them to do every day. And it's pretty interesting. These workouts they get better every year. A lot of them will go home. A lot of them will stay. Now, I'm also always looking for new talent. So, I'll go to showcases. I'll go to games. I'll go to places where I've had some leads on players. I was just at Lake Charles, Louisiana over the weekend to meet with some guys who have a couple great players that I'm going to try to get involved with. And, you can't take them all. Not if you want to give them the kind of attention they really need, in my opinion. A lot of firms are bigger than ours, and we're more of a boutique. But I got to be there for my guys. They want to talk, I'm here. And they're not talking to, a bunch of underlings. Some of these guys will sign up with a big name agent
and never talk to them.
Hardly ever. No. And so then that agent's only going to base his decisions on the almighty dollar, which is usually a good thing, but it's not always well thought. I mean,
yeah.
I'd rather put my guy in position to really hit the home run, even if we have to wait a little bit. So maybe you have a guy that's really needs to feel the love and support of the team. Well, a guy like that's probably better off signing a 2 or 3 year deal with the team instead of arbitrating, right? And going year to year, which might make you a little bit more money, But arbitration is a tough process, and the player has to sit through it and listen to the team beat him down while we build him up. And that doesn't show him any love. Some of them can just, cross it off like it's business, which it is, and it's nothing. But some of them it bothers. And some of them would much rather feel the love of the team saying, hey, we'd rather do a 3-year deal, avoid arbitration, keep you part of our core. Man, those guys step up and play much better. And next thing you know, we're talking about a real big deal at the end of that contract.
I think it feels like not enough players, and I don't know if it's in baseball or maybe it's all sports, they don't bet on themselves. They take the easy money. They, instead of saying, hey, I'm going to bet on myself and improve. You see that a little bit here and there. And I'm curious how often it works out or not, and how much more it is. But I bet on myself every day. And if I could ever put together a contract that would reward me in that way while putting the risk and the onus on me to perform, man, I would love that. But that's not really the case. Do you think it should be more performance-based, or do you think the way things are going now, we're okay? I know we talked about this a little bit.
I mean, I go back and forth with it because I do, especially as it involves incentives in the contract. For a hitter, you can't have home runs or anything like that. Only plate appearances as incentives. Really, the closers are about the only guys that you can get incentives that accurately depict what they do, because there's a games finished clause you can put in your contract. So if your the pitcher of record finishes the game, then that shows he's the closer. But yeah, I'd like that. Think about this. The great Charlie Finley, a man who I believe belongs in the Hall of Fame and is not there right now. Charlie Finley was a cheapskate of an owner. Okay. He had the smallest group of people working in the front office. He had the smallest group of scouts. He did so much of it on his own that he was basically the general manager. And yet that man won 3 World Series in a row. I mean, I don't get how he's not in the Hall of Fame, but
yeah, you win 3 in a row, you would think. I think, and I forget, someone said this, the Hall of Fame, it's not what it used to be. I think, I'm not as big a fan of it because for a few reasons. One, in my mind, you're either a Hall of Famer or you're not. You've retired. Your stats don't get any different. So why do we need to vote 15 years in a row to see if someone is? Let's find a better way to say, hey, this person is or they're not. Again, their stats not getting any better. It is what it is, right? And it's just hard. Then the argument with the numbers and the eras and, did you win a lot of championships? Did you win no championships? I don't know. I'd have to take a closer look, but I think there's probably a handful of people that belong in the Hall based on performance. And let's not even talk about the people who were accused of doing, just regular people. So it's hard for me to really get too crazy one way or another with it, but I think it's lost its luster. And I think that's in all sports. Your stats are your stats. They don't change. Why? I know there's new voters, but what I don't understand that. Does that make sense to you?
Oh, absolutely makes sense. And I think in the traditional sense, you're right on. My father's situation is a little different than that because managers don't get put in by the press. And there are all these, I don't know, criteria that people have just kind of thrown out there. If it were just about winning percentage, my father's winning percentage is higher than 10 of the managers in the Hall of Fame already. That's all he did was win.
Well, why do you think he's not in? I mean, is it his personality?
A little bit. But if it comes to being famous, I doubt there's ever been a more famous manager. My father's was on a cover of Life magazine and Time magazine, hosted Saturday Night Live, was mentioned in and acted in movies.
Someone more well known.
Yeah.
There's not many. Pete Rose deserves to be in the Hall. I think it's a Hall without Pete Rose, especially these days with the way that they're embracing gambling. To think that people aren't gambling on their own teams is, I think, naive. Don't you? I mean, maybe not directly, but I mean that could have been going on even indirectly forever. And now it's just that much easier. It's a click of a button. The way they embrace gambling, Pete Rose. And obviously, I think Pete Rose is Pete Rose's biggest obstacle. He just can't get out of his own way. But even still, it's not whether or not you're a good guy necessarily. Although that should be part of it. That's my opinion. Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame. But give me one other player. I think Don Mattingly should be in the Hall of Fame. Give me one other player aside from Pete Rose who I think most people think that isn't in that should be. You could just put one in right now.
Roger Clemens. I put right in because.
Yeah, but I mean, everyone believes in Roger. There's no one who doesn't think he's not a Hall of Famer aside from him, Bonds too. I mean, put them all in. It's all
sure.
Put them all in. It's a silly game.
Well, the two guys you just mentioned, and Clemens and Bonds. I mean, we all assume that they did, but they still weren't ever. They never tested positive for performance-enhancing drugs.
Yeah, and they were Hall of Famers before they ever appeared to use anything. I think.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure David Ortiz tested positive for performance-enhancing drugs, and he just recently got in. And I get that. Okay, they put some guys in maybe for dual purpose. Phil Rizzuto was a guy like that probably because he was a great player who won tons of rings and was an MVP. I'm not sure his numbers totally stack up to be Hall of Fame numbers, but one of the greatest play-by-play guys and color commentators you've ever heard. And I think the two combined put him in. I'm hoping that'll help my father. If there were, Phil Pepe told me this, if there were a World Series Hall of Fame, my father would be the starting second baseman because as a regular 250 hitter, he was a 333 World Series hitter.
Yeah, crazy.
He had about a 350 slugging percentage. In the World Series, he was almost a 600 slugging percentage. He and Mickey Mantle hit back-to-back home runs in 3 different World Series games. I mean, crazy. Think of that,
It's, yeah. There are people who are in there for their performance and not in there for their lack of performance in the postseason as well. So I think there's there's got to be some more guidelines, uniformity, whatever it is. Get Pete Rose in the Hall of Fame. Get these other guys in also. People want to see. It's part of history. It's like, you can't whitewash the history of baseball. Just tell it what it is. Put a hall like, hey, these people we think they did, or they were. I don't even know what you're going to say.
Yeah.
Speaking of averages, Ted Williams hits 400. Or we got a guy down here in Miami who's was flirting with it for a little bit. Now he's down to 380. That'll never happen, right? I mean, no one's ever going to hit 400. He's 50 points ahead of second place in the league. And he's still 20 points behind. At this point, he can't. I mean, he'd have to go on a ridiculous. There's no way he could do it.
I never say no way about anything like that because if you watch him, I love his approach. It's so old school.
Slapping singles all day.
And
he hits a couple homers, but slapping singles, that's it. Find the hole.
Right. But you need that on the team. You need somebody that's getting on base like that. That's who you want in your 1 or 2 hole. And like I say, I miss that a little bit more. A lot of guys, I don't know, they feel like they're selling out if they do that, and man, I love it.
Yeah,
I love to watch him hit.
what record do you think on that? I mean, that we talk about records, the hitting streak. I think someone's going to break the hitting streak. I think that will happen in my lifetime. I don't think anyone will hit 401. I doubt Cal Ripken will get caught. Nolan Ryan with his no hitters.
Oh, and strikeouts.
It's unbelievable how good of a pitcher he was.
Oh.
Is there something that you think, another one that I haven't mentioned that will never get broken?
Yeah, whoever's win totals has the most wins. I mean, I think just pitchers getting 300 wins, is going to be so stinking rare.
They want to know how embarrassing the Yankees trade deadline day was yesterday. A little bit, they were on the opposite spectrum of the Mets.
Yeah, wow. I mean,
does it surprise you that they did set?
No, I don't think so. I don't think I'm really surprised with any of the moves. I mean,
closer to the Yankees organization. I feel like I've asked you this before, but how close are you still with the Yankees organization? And how much is that because you're an agent, and how much of that is because of your history?
I do have a lot of friends there. And I think part of that's because Brian Cashman and I go back a long way, and we were interns together in the 80s. I mean, people don't really realize Brian worked his way up. He was a clubby at one time. I mean, he was doing everything. And his heart, I remember there was a time, I think it was in the 90s, there were rumors that George might fire him. And Milwaukee had already said if he becomes available, they were going to interview him.
Yeah.
And as a friend, I remember saying to him one day, man, there's a part of me that wishes that would happen for you. I mean, obviously, I don't wish you'd be fired, but
to prove yourself somewhere else, like the way Theo Epstein kind of did. Yeah.
Because so many people just associated him as being George's puppet, and that George was making all the calls. He wasn't making all the calls, but he was obviously making a lot. He was being George, right? But sure enough, Brian really does a good job and doesn't get credit for it. Obviously, he makes a lot of decisions based on what he thinks the boss would have wanted, as does Randy Levine, the president of Yankee operations. And I highly admire that, because, that shows honor and respect to somebody who's been gone for a while, and they continue to do those things. But those things will bite you sometimes, signing a Hicks to a long-term deal like he did. I didn't hear anybody complain about it when it happened, but
no, the players got to perform. The same with coaches. It's like the players got to perform.
Absolutely.
You sign them to these big contracts, you make a big trade, and then they don't. Who knows? It's not his fault. But on the flip side, we're approaching 15 years since the Yankees won a World Series. The Orioles are leading the American League East, which is crazy. Good for them. I mean, it's been so long since they've been relevant, and yet the Yankees aren't that far away.
They're not that far away, but I believe are they in last place with a winning record?
But everyone in the AL East has a winning record.
I mean,
that's the second time this late. I think the NL East had it, if I remember correct. I saw it on a stat on there. The Yankees are in last place.
Wow, that's amazing.
They're only 3.5 games out of the wild card, and the teams that are ahead of them, they're going to have all of the teams are ahead of them, obviously, and they'll get a chance to play a bunch of them. So it's all right there for the taking, as opposed
they'd be in first place if they were in the Central. I mean, think about that. It's
opposed to what's going on, and it's always good when the team on the other side is struggling. The Mets with a fire sale and a balk-off win last night, which is I think that's the second one this year. Is either the second balk-off? I don't know. It's crazy to me.
I really thought the Mets were going to be special this year. I loved when they went out, hired Buck Showalter.
Yeah, get Scherzer, the Mets have just with pitching because they have these monster lineups and they can't stay healthy, or maybe they struggle a little bit. That's baseball. Baseball is like football is a game of inches. Baseball is a game of inches as well. And when we talk about whether it goes this much foul or this much past someone, or you think about everyone wins a third and loses a third, and now it's what do you do with that other third, right?
Sure. And think of the difference between a pop-up and a home run on a bat. I mean, you talk about an inch. How about less than a millimeter?
Stadium am I at? What's the win? What's the win like? I mean, it's so unpredictable, I think. And that's what you want as a fan. You want to watch a game that's unpredictable, to be like, all right, I don't know who's going to win. I wouldn't take one team to win it all this year. I wouldn't bet against the Braves just because how strong they look, but they're beatable. All of these teams are beatable. So it becomes exciting. And by the way, I wanted to get this in the conversation. It would be nice to see Ohtani and Trout in the playoffs. I see what they can do. Ohtani I'm so fascinated by him. I think he's going to be the greatest player to ever play the game by the time we're done, if he stays healthy. And I'm sure we've heard that before, but sure. I think he will be he's not the most dominant pitcher, but he's very good. And his hitting, I mean, he's got his average up, his homers are. It just feels like no one is going to be able to stop him. And if you start thinking about the salaries here, like he's making 40, he's $100 million player. He's worth $100 million to play. Basically.
Absolutely. And, we can give him all the Babe Ruth comparisons we want, but, it came to a time where Babe quit pitching. And this guy's still going, and it just feels like he's getting stronger. It feels like he's really going to just continue on this
very hard. It's hard to stay healthy if you're just a pitcher. It's hard to stay healthy if you're just a hitter. Obviously, it helps that he can DH. But I'm excited I like everything about that guy.
I do too. I do too. It's like I just hope he can do it for a little bit longer to really continue on with this controversy. I'd wondered if they were going to try to trade him. Obviously, you can't. How could you trade that guy?
I think he should stay. If I'm Ohtani, I think I should stay. But look, who knows? I think he will, but I don't know. Who's your favorite to win it all? If you had to pick one today, or who do you think will make the World Series? How about that? Give me a team in each league.
I feel like one of the two Texas teams are going to be in there from the American League, and there's just watching all the moves Chris Young's made down here. It's been really impressive with the Rangers. Obviously, Houston won the World Series a year ago. My friend Dana Brown took over as general manager there. How many people are going to get hired as a GM right after your team wins a World Series? So he didn't have any other direction to go, but they're right there back in the swing of things. So, and look at that, Scherzer and Verlander, who were teammates a week ago, right? Now maybe towing the mound against each other for the American League Championship.
And meanwhile, the Mets are paying the majority of the salary.
Yeah. I mean,
Give me Orioles versus Reds right now. I'm in. I would love it.
Oh, that would be exciting.
Wouldn't that be great?
I'll tell you, I love watching these teams. I mean, these teams full of kids like that. To watch a Gunnar Henderson and a Rutschman and these guys go at it. The Reds had the ones you expected to be good, the De La Cruzes, but what about these McLeans and Steers and some of these guys that popped up? I really do get excited watching some of those teams. And then you got teams sneaking up like Milwaukee, who you expected to be good all year and felt like they really weren't. Atlanta's just walking away with the East. But for some reason, we don't talk about them very much.
There's so big. The problem is that you can get in as a wild card and win the whole thing easy. It's not that it's easy, but it's not as difficult as it used to be, where all the favorites used to win everything in all the sports. That's it was like very chalky. So I think there's a bunch of teams that have a shot, even including teams that aren't even in the playoffs as of today. If you told me the winner of the World Series or the two teams playing the World Series aren't even in the playoffs today, if this season ended, I'd be like, yeah, that makes sense.
Absolutely.
It could be. We talked about the draft. I'm a big Gator fan. I was got to see some of the regionals. I think you and I both agree that Wyatt Langford should have been the first position player. Would you have picked him over Skeens?
I don't know that I could pick anyone over him.
Yeah.
That guy's arm is so good. I mean, he could be in the big leagues this year. I think he's that good.
Okay.
And I think depending on what organization, he's with Pittsburgh, obviously. I think if he were with the Angels, I think he might be in the big leagues in September.
Do you pick when you're an agent? You have to. I mean, do you decide between I want to go after a pitcher or a hitter because pitchers, if you hit it, you've hit the jackpot. But hitters, there's just so many more opportunities.
Yeah, and with every pitcher, you're going to deal with an injury at some time, and could that be at the most inopportune moment? Yeah, sure could. But there's so much luck involved in it, good and bad for each player. Man, I could give you story after story about guys who deserved to get their opportunity and for some reason didn't, and then guys who just stumbled into the big leagues because so many good things happened for them. And now, obviously, they've got to go out and perform.
Got to go out, right? But there's an element of luck and timing and
Sure.
all types of stuff.
And that changes.
Players who never made it.
Sure. Well, like when you have a free agent, right? My partner and I, we sit there trying to break down rosters and pick out the exact best place for a guy because depending on his age, if he's 29, 30 plus, he needs to go to a competitive team, right? Because they're going to churn their roster and try to win and put guys in the big leagues. If you send him to a team that's rebuilding, if he's on a St. Louis right now or, Oakland, well, they don't care about rewarding an older guy. They'd rather throw a young kid out there, give him an opportunity, and see what they've got. So, but sometimes that changes. I mentioned St. Louis. That was a team we all preseason thought might win the division, right? Well, now they're not, and they're at the bottom of the division. So as much as we lament over making those decisions, it's still a game that has to be played on the field by young men, and it doesn't always work out like you think it's going to.
Yeah. No idea. People can predict who's going to be who and who's going to do what. You just sort of, someone comes out of the blue. What do you, when you're scouting for players, do you have a preference on, say, I want to focus on high school, I want to focus on college, or I want to focus on someone who's in the pros that maybe we can get.
Well, so my partner and I decided decades ago we were not going to be those guys that go. Everybody that's playing now in pro ball has an agent.
So if they have an agent, you're out. That's not.
Yeah, I'm not knocking on those guys' doors. Those are the kind of guys that ask for your wife's phone number. And
do they ever come to you? You say, "Look, I'm unhappy with my agent."
Yeah, that's different. Yes. Now, if that happens, obviously I'd be a fool if I didn't entertain that situation. Yeah. That has happened before. And that's what I say, well, fire your guy and I'd love to talk to you.
Agents are, it's like it's recruiting. And it could be a dirty business, right? Well,
absolutely.
A lot of people out there who they don't have a great reputation, and they're some of the most successful agents. And I'm not just talking about baseball, just in general.
To me, a thief's a thief, though. That's what I tell my clients. I mean, if he'll steal you from me, he'll probably steal from you.
Yeah, the cheater and cheater. Right?
A liar's a liar, right? That's just, to me, how life is. But you said earlier something about pitcher, hitter. What am I looking for? Really, I don't care about that. I just want good. I just want a guy that's damn good, going to work his tail off, going to keep his nose clean, going to do it right, who believes in himself and will continue to believe in himself even when he gets his butt kicked, because baseball's going to kick your butt. It's a tough game.
It is a tough game. It's a grind. People don't understand, if you're a player, how good you have to be to make it. And even if you make it, now you're in the single A and the double A, and it's not luxurious, and you're not getting paid a lot, and you're on the road, and it's such a grind. I know people who were in the system who didn't want to do it anymore. I don't know if they would have made it or not, but they just decided, it gets weeded out. And that's okay, because, not everyone's making 40 million. If you can make it, it's good. And if you can make a living and enjoy it and it's still your game, then great. That's the interesting thing about the baseball is, like, you have high schoolers getting drafted. Then if you can go to college, if you go to college, you got to go for 3 years. Do you like that rule? Do you think everyone should have to go to college or play?
I think they're all better off mentally, usually physically too, going to college. That said, you're a fool if you don't, weigh out all your options, because if you're a day one guy, if you're a 7-figure bonus guy, you got to consider that, whether you're mentally ready or not, because that can be life-changing money that, whether you make it or not, you're still set for life. People don't realize how much the odds are against these guys.
Yeah.
Just being drafted, you only have like less than 9% chance of making it to a 4-year career. Okay. That means you're going to be a 7-figure guy in the big leagues. You're going to get a pension. That's not a very big percentage. And that's of drafted guys. And every one of those guys thinks he's going to make it.
It's hard. Well, that's the thing. Like, it's hard to tell who's a major leaguer and who's not. I think in some of these other sports, you can tell easier.
Absolutely. Sure. Well, look at that. Football first rounders, basketball first rounders, they step right into lineups. They play. And, how many first rounders in baseball do you even see in the big leagues in 2 years?
Yeah.
It's
from a team perspective, is it better to have in the way it is, or would they be better served if everyone went to college? Because when you invest a certain amount of money in someone, you have to. I mean, I guess if you could cut bait and not worry about the money, but at that level, you kind of have to hit it, because you have a limited amount of players, and your farm system needs to be ripe for when you're trying to make a run or when you're trying to trade for someone.
Absolutely. It's such a grind picking the right guys. There's so many things you can't control that you'll never know. And it's ever mutating. I mean, the draft right now with a 20-round draft, think about this. Basically, because of the way the system works, each team has an allotted amount of money they can use in the top 10 picks. Okay? Well, they usually overdraft second and third round guys or draft guys that they may have to overpay. Well, then so rounds 6 through 10 become what they call money saver picks, where you're picking guys to save money so you can use that money to pay for the higher guys. Then you'll have to take a kid 11th, 12th, 13th round as insurance policy for if one of those guys fails a physical, maybe a kid going to, a high-end school who's a high school kid who's got a big number because he knows he's going to get it 3 years from now.
And meanwhile, the later round pick could be the one who hits.
And because it's such a crapshoot, it's silly. They should invent a system or come up with one that the best guy goes first, the worst guy goes last. But even there, okay, you talk about who should go to school and who shouldn't. Well, you'll have some of these kids in high school who have a huge arm, right? They're upper 90s with all kinds of movement, but they're not always hitting the strike zone.
Yeah. And they might not be ready mentally, physically.
Or physically. So do you really want to send that guy to a Power 5 D1? Because if he's not filling up the zone, he's not getting out there because that coach isn't paid to develop players. That coach is paid to win games. And college coaches get a lot of money. And so, I've got to rethink that when I'm helping these guys pick out their school. I can't send the big stuff guy, the 6'8" kid to that Power 5 school, because if he's not filling it up, then he needs to go to a smaller mid-major where they're going to throw him out there Friday night regardless.
Also, you go to college. This is the weirdest thing to me in sports is that they're using aluminum bats in college, not what the pros use. And
it's all about money.
Yeah, I get it, but it's that there's definitely got to be a factor in that in the transition between the two. You might be an even better hitter in wood than you are with aluminum.
I think every hitter prefers wood. And it's just the feel, the sound,
most of the home run hitters are going to hit home runs. It doesn't matter what they're using. It just might be a 470-foot home run instead of a 380-foot home run. And then I guess that depends on what field you're playing in to see what might be. Is there a player that you missed on that you wish you could have said yes to, or just was this close to getting, or you had conversations with? Is that anything you can share or think of?
There's lots of guys you miss on. I'll give you a weird example. When we're talking about big guys, Chris Martin. We both went to Arlington High School. Okay. I watched him in high school a bunch, but he's so tall that it takes those really tall guys a little bit longer, I think, to repeat easier. It's a lot easier when you're 5'10". You don't have so much going on to repeat the same motion. And I talked to him in high school and said, I really think you're going to be a guy one day. But I didn't know when that one day was. And then he went to McLennan Junior College and talked to him a little bit there too. But I didn't stick my neck out because he still wasn't there yet. And the big guys like that, their arm always looks a little slower to me. But he ended up having to play some indie ball before he finally really got his opportunity.
Yeah.
And he's still out there doing great. And yeah, that's what I missed when my inner scout was telling me the whole time, get him, Get him. The kid's going to make it. And you said something earlier about scouting, and the best thing I ever learned was from a Hall of Fame scout named Gary Hughes. When I was a rookie agent, I said, throw me a few pointers, help me out. And his main advice was trust your eyes. I didn't really know what he meant. And I said, what do you mean by that? He said, all right, think back when your father was managing. What players did you find yourself looking at all the time? I laughed. Dave Winfield. I don't care if I was in the upper deck of Yankee Stadium, if I was in Mr. Steinbrenner's box, if I was in the dugout. I'd found myself staring at Dave Winfield. He goes, well, there you go. Best athlete on the field, right? Will we ever see another guy drafted in the first round in 3 sports again? I pretty much doubt that. But that was just a coincidence. He said, so I started going to events and not doing a bunch of pre-work. I'd just go and let my eyes take me where they did.
The eye test.
And it would work. And something else he told me, he goes, the next day, if you're seeing something over and over again in your mind, guy's swing, guy's arm action, one of his pitches maybe, he goes, that's your inner baseball guy saying, hey, get that kid.
Yeah.
And he was absolutely right.
Where the booking that you do for acts, very similar to scouting baseball players and signing baseball players. Is that how you got into that? Give us a quick story behind how you got into that.
Well, actually, so my partner, she's like my sister. When my father passed away, I had just graduated college and literally thought my dream of being an agent died that same moment. And I ended up taking my first job as producing a television show. Actually, at first I was just booking guests, and then I started producing the show. And it was a live show, 100% live. There was no 15-second delay. If anybody said something inappropriate, it aired. But we were right after the news on Sunday nights, and we'd have a sports guest and a musical guest. Well, so I started reaching out to a lot of the local clubs around here that would have musical talent. And I noticed that there were clubs called Cowboys. And maybe Toby Keith was going to be there a month from now on Saturday. Well, I'd talk to this person who booked all their talent, and she would hook me up with the management group so I could find out if he wanted to do our show. We became friends over the years, and she's who I started this agency with because she's so inundated in with all the people in Nashville. She knows all the agencies because she's done it for forever. And so we just book. We don't represent the musicians. We just hook them up. So if you're wanting some celebrity to perform at an event you're doing, you reach out to us. We'll get it. We'll help you set it up. And there's so much more to it than people really realize when you got production, stage, travel.
Look at Taylor Swift, just gave all of her truck people an extra $100,000. Can't do it without them.
No, there's so much work. Everybody's green room has to be set up differently with a different type of water and different kind of beverages and food. And
how much of the negotiation do you do with that in the booking people, or is it just
there's a lot of negotiating because every situation is so markedly different. Some places can't get certain things that other places can, and setting up the stage, if you're doing it at a field, sometimes the stage has to be in the very middle of the field.
Yeah.
Well, that changes how the entertainers get on and off the stage, and some of them won't walk through the crowd. there's so many little things people don't take into account. And I'm lucky I have her, because I learned something new with every event we put on.
I got to meet her in Dallas when I was out there and did my event. Very sharp. Looking forward to talking to her and you more about how we can help each other out. Give me something about your dad that people think that's just not true. You know, there's always people like your dad. There's always those rumors out there and stuff. And with you.
You know, I think everybody assumed he kicked dirt on me and roughed me up all the time. But golly, my father never even raised his voice at me. And I promise you, there were lots of times he should have.
It's a coaching style. It's you see it out there. I'm not a huge personally. I'm not a huge fan if I see people that are just yelling on the sideline, and that's not him. It's different in basketball and football, but I don't. That's not my kind of coach. I think there's value to being stern when you need to, and knowing when to not be, and who do you need to be harder on. But yeah, I think that's a coaching person. That doesn't mean that's who the Bobby Knights of the world is, that they're at home throwing shit all over the house. It's just not. That's just not how it is, right?
No, what I saw, and and Tim Knight, Bobby's son, is a friend of mine. We were both on Oprah back when we were in college. He was at Stanford, I was at Texas Tech, and the show was titled "Children of Controversial Figures," and I'd never even heard of the show because it was brand new and it didn't even air in Lubbock, Texas back then. It was airing in the Dallas area, but not in Texas. I mean, not in Lubbock. And I just wanted to meet Tim Knight and all these other celebrities' kids, because
pretty cool.
Yeah, it's like it's like a fraternity. When you grow up in that big shadow, you really attach. And Tim's been one of my good friends ever since. But to kind of put what you said in perspective about the coaching, and I watched one day, Gene Monahan, the trainer for the Yankees, was going through the injury report in my father's office. This was pregame, and he's saying, "Hey, don't pitch this guy. His arm's a little dinged up. He'll be okay in a day or two. Pitch this one only in an emergency. Try to get this guy in there if possible. He really needs work." Then he's going through the position players, and he gets to Ricky Henderson, and he says, "Look, Skip, Ricky's hamstring's really bad. He's in there getting treatment right now. I think you should sit him. He wants to play, but I think you should sit him because we have an off day tomorrow, and maybe we can get this thing right." Dad gets up and walks into the training room, puts his hand on Ricky's back, and says, "Hey, bud, Gino thinks I should sit you today and rest you because we got an off day tomorrow." "No way, Skip, I'm your guy." And he said, you're damn right you're my guy, and I need you all year. We got that off day tomorrow. And he goes, "No, just let me cruise. Just let me cruise." "Are you sure?" "Skip, I'm your guy." He goes, "Are you telling me you're going to be careful? You're going to take care of this thing?" "I give you my word." Dad kind of loves on him a little, and we walk out of there. And I said, "Dad, that was cool. I'd never seen him show that much love like that." And he said, "Pal, they're all different.
Yeah.
Some of them need love. Some of them need a kick in the ass.
Yeah.
And some of them I don't need to say a damn word to." He goes, "That's my job as a manager, to figure them out and figure out how to push their buttons."
And some don't even know what to do. They're missing.
Right. And I think most of us assume they treat them all the same way. And some of them probably do.
And that's the same way as an agent. That's the same way as a salesperson.
Absolutely. Right.
No, they talk about mirroring. I don't know that mirroring is necessary, but there's a different way to interact with people. I'll give you some rapid fire stuff. Savannah Bananas, big name in baseball. Do you like the idea?
I do think it's entertaining. Anything that makes people smile at a baseball game, I'm all for.
What's your favorite thing to eat at a game?
I mean, if it's the traditional baseball food, I'm going to go with Frito pie. But I mean,
baseball has the best food of any professional. The food at the baseball parks are the best. We do a trip every year, so I've been to a ton of them. Always look forward to seeing what kind of foods they have at a baseball. Unique, weird stuff that you can't get everywhere. It's I love going to that, especially new ballparks.
mm-hmm.
Baseball movie, Field of Dreams is my favorite sports movie. Maybe my second or third favorite movie of all time. Give me a couple of baseball movies that you really love.
I love Field of Dreams. I love Bull Durham. I love any baseball movie.
You ever see The Slugger's Wife?
No,
that's a
really?
Great movie. Yeah, guy gets hurt. It's I won't ruin it for you, but check out The Slugger's Wife.
I'm all over that. I can't wait. I could have actually been in Field of Dreams.
Oh yeah, that would have been awesome.
I was
Field of Dreams hat, which the Yankees played in, which was a made-for-TV event. Disappointing if you were there in person, but still a great event. How true was the movie 61? I mean, how close did they get? Because it painted a picture. Was it mostly, you think that's kind of how things went down?
Yeah, I know it was. Oh, my partner's father, Phil Pepe, was not only in the movie, but there was somebody playing him as a young actor also. And he kind of had an inside because he was one of the 3 sports writers for the Yankees that, traveled with the team back then. And, he remembers it well. Obviously, I'm close with the Mantle family and know the Marist boys. And they were happy with it too. But Phil ironically did not play himself in the movie, which his inside joke was, I'm not a good enough actor to play myself. But I
think there's probably some truth to that. We're going to let you out of the Wolff Den with the same question everybody gets. You got 24 hours to spend with anybody in the world. They have to be alive, and you can't be related to them. Who would you choose, and what would you guys do?
Oh, they have to be alive. That one drives me crazy because to me,
easy if they doesn't matter.
Yeah,
and they can't relate it to you.
Well, if it's picking up that player that I'm a fan of, or that.
Well, it could be a non-sports. It could be an actor, an actress, a musician, and anyone in the world. Literally, it could be Oprah. Again.
I'd say I'd pick Shakira, and I'm not going to tell you what my plans would be for the day. But no, if it were really get to know somebody that player that's out there, I'd probably want to go fishing with him, right? To be able to sit there and
do a little bit of everything. You got 24 hours, sure.
Yeah, but golly, who's that guy that I've always idolized, and none of them are around anymore? That's what's so tough for me, because I would have said Jim Thorpe in a second, because I think he's the greatest athlete in sports history.
If you start talking about the past, there's so many options. That's why we keep it present, and we'll see if we can make it happen.
Oh, well, Babe Ruth would have been next for me, just because my father had a crush on him.
Yeah.
And thought he was there. Ironically, they're buried home plate to second base apart from each other.
Oh, that's cool.
Which is really neat, because Dad had a man crush on the Babe, and he wasn't that way about a lot of athletes.
All right, give me a name. What's coming to the mind?
Who's the best 2-sport athlete you think right now?
Right now, it was Bo Jackson.
Right. Who I've met but not really gotten to know, so maybe that's who I'd pick.
All right, there you go. Bo Jackson. He's on my Mount Rushmore that I had done. I'm not sure that's more of like the favorite players, not the best. We're just the coolest, because Griffey's on there also. But great choice. And it was a pleasure chatting with you. If you know someone who's going to be the next star in baseball, we didn't even talk about NIL too. College, NIL, baseball agent, reach out to Billy. If you're looking to book a celebrity or so, reach out to Billy, integritybooking.com. Great to chat. Appreciate your time, and looking forward to seeing what happens this rest of this year in baseball.
Well, I appreciate it. Would love for anybody to call us about a booking engagement. We just got to ask about Jason Aldean.
Yeah.
Ironically, at a show in California with all the controversy that's going on with him. So we'll see if that ends up transpiring. But man, Matt, I appreciate all your time and love the show.
Appreciate it. We'll talk soon. More Wolff Den next week. Have a great weekend. Do something fun, do something good, and we'll see you soon.